In this lecture, we're going to see another method of exploiting local file inclusion vulnerabilities and gain full shell or full control over the target server. So in the previous video, we've seen how to do it using the environ variable or environment variables. And in this lecture, we're going to see how to do it based on the logs. These servers have a lot of log files, and basically at the moment we can read any file on the server as long as we have permissions to read it. So if we can manage to write anything to any of these files, then we can pretty much execute code and gain control over our target. So what you need to do is you need to try and read any of the log files and see or think of a way to interact with these log files so that you can write stuff on it. For example, if the log files that you're reading or interacting with are mail log files, then maybe you can send an email with a code and then it'll show up in the log file. In our example, we're going to be using the var log auth.log, and this file contains all the login attempts to the target server. So let's do it and you'll have a better understanding. At the moment now, I just have the basic exploit and I'm trying to show etc password. So this is the file that we used in our basic exploit. I'm just going to remove that. And I'm going to look for var log auth.log. Now, as you can see, the file is readable and we can read login attempts to the target server. So what we're going to do, we're going to think, now this file displays all login attempts. So why not try to log in and see if the attempt will be displayed here. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to try to SSH into the server. So I'm going to use SSH. SSH is just a remote login service that is used by web servers. Pretty much every web server has it installed. So we're going to try to SSH into it. So we're going to do SSH and then we're going to put the username, and I'm just going to put a random username that probably doesn't even exist. I just want to see if this request will be recorded in the log file. So I'm going to SSH and I'm just going to put a username as random. And then I'm going to do add, and we're going to put the IP address, which is 10.20.14.10. And I'm going to hit enter. Now it's asking me for a password. Obviously, the name doesn't exist anyway, so I'm just going to put a random password as well. And I'm not really trying to hack using SSH. I'm literally just attempting to log in. I'm going to Control-C now, and I want to see if this will be logged in this file. So I'm going to send another request, and I'm going to look for my username. So the username was called random, and I'll see if that was logged. And you can see here, it's telling us in the log file, so it was recorded in the server that someone tried to log in with the username random, and it actually has my IP address. So it's actually recorded my IP address as well. So now we can read that file, and we can also write to the file by logging in with a non-existing account. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to try to log in again, and instead of putting a username, instead of putting the username as random, I'm actually going to put the PHP code that we always used to give me a reverse shell or reverse connection on this server. Now again, you can use any PHP code you want. In my example, I'm going to use code that will give me reverse shell on the target computer. So before I run the code, I'm going to listen on the port, and I'm going to do that using netcat like we always did. So it's going to be netcat vvlp, and I'm going to put my port, which is 8888. And now we're listening for connections. And I'm going to try to log in again to the target. And in this case, I'm actually going to put my PHP code. So same code that we used before. So my username is going to be, I'm going to put 2 quotes, and then I'm going to put my PHP code. So we're using pass-through. And then we're going to pass the command, the PHP command that we want to run. And that command is going to be, I'm going to use single quotes here. And then my command is going to be netcat e bin sh. Then I'm going to put my IP address, which is 10.20.14.208. Then I'm going to put the port that I'm listening on, which is 8888. Now, with this method, you're only going to get one shot with this code, because if you put the code incorrectly, the whole thing is going to break and the file is not going to be displayed anymore because you have an error in your code. So what I suggest is I'm going to keep the pass-through as it is, because that's a safe function and I'm sure that this is going to run correctly. I forgot to put a semicolon here, so I'm going to put that there. So I'm sure that this code is going to run correctly, but I have a lot of minuses in here, I have a lot of spaces, and I have a lot of forward slashes, which always have problems when you're trying to pass them between Linux commands. You can try to skip through these characters, but what I suggest is you actually encrypt this using base64 and then decrypt it at the other end. So I'll show you how to do that. First off, I'm going to copy this command. So this is the shell command that we want the pass-through function to run. I've copied it. I'm going to go to my burp suite. And I'm going to go to my decoder here. We never had a look on the decoder. So this tab allows you to encode and decode text to different types of encoding. So I'm going to paste what I copied. And I'm going to encode it as base64. So this text, the netcat bin sh, my IP port, is converted to this encrypted code. I'm going to copy this code and I'm going to substitute it here into my command. So instead of running it like this, instead of putting the text, I'm going to put the base64 code to make sure that there's no special characters that would interfere with the command with the bash. So I have that copied. Now, if I run this way, so I have my pass-through, which is a PHP function, and I'm telling it to execute this shell command. Now, obviously, if you copy this text and run it, it's not going to run anything because it's just gibberish. So I need to tell it that this is base64 code, and I'm going to do that using a PHP function called base64 decode. So I'm going to tell it to decode this piece of text, and then once you decode it, run the pass-through on it. So I'm just going to type it in here. So it's going to be base64 decode, and that's just another function, a PHP function. And then I'm going to put the brackets. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger so we can talk about it more. And I'm just actually going to copy it and run it again, just so that we'll talk about it a little bit more. Okay, so first off, we're actually using the username as our code, as the code that we want to inject, because as we see, the username is being displayed on the log page. So anything we put in the username will be executed as PHP code. So we have that between two quotes here, between this and this quote. Now we have our PHP code that we always used, and we also always used the pass-through function to run Unix commands on the target server. So we're keeping that the exact same, and we're telling it to run this text, but before you run this text, I want you to decode it based on base64. So we have pass-through, decode the following code, and this is the code. So this is the command, the netcat command that we always use. We're decoding it based on base64, and then we're telling it to run it using the pass-through function to execute it as a bash command. So I'm going to hit enter now. And that will ask me for a password because it thinks that this is actually a username. So we're injecting the whole thing as a username. So I'm just going to put any password, anything random, hit enter. Now this should be stored now in the logs. So this code should have been injected into the auth.log. So we're going to go back now to our browser. And you can see that I'm already listening here. So I'm just going to hit enter here on the browser. And as you can see, we got a connection back from our target website. And if we do ID, you'll see that I'm into the target website with www.data username or user group. And I can run commands or do whatever I want on the target server. this is just another method of exploiting local file inclusion vulnerabilities to get a shell on the target computer. Now again, this is just an idea, and you can try these ideas with different types of log files. So you can try it with the auth.log, you can try it with any other type of log files, but you need to think about it. You need to think how you could inject code into that log file. So for example, as I said, if it's a mail servers, and then try to send it an email. If it's the auth.log, like we have in this current example, then try to log in using SSH and see if you can inject code and if that code will be executed on the target computer.